So there's always a hunt, there's always a search. And the gem, they're not always gems, but they're always possibilities.
The marriage of man and machine, I guess, and the need for speed and power and the wonderment of it all. And it doesn't matter how it works, it just needs to work.
When it starts coming together, then it's really wonderful.
We switch the gas tank and then burning on the paint, and then scratch on the pipes, and then put on the different stuff, and then looks like a 1950s bike. And the customer say, "Whoa, I like that."
Sometimes pieces go together, or things go together just perfectly. They go where they belong. They go where they should be. And it's like you're putting things back exactly the way they were supposed to go. They don't fight you. They just go right in. Everything is perfect. And you step back at that point and wow.
When Jesus invited his followers, take up your cross, it was not a call to annihilation. It was a call to spiritual greatness in this divine conspiracy of sacrificial love. Now human beings were being offered a cause worth living for and dying for and resurrecting for. Now God was reconciling everything to himself. Now sin and death and darkness and evil and guilt were about to receive their eviction notice. The cross was not empty. There was a man on it. And that means you and I can have something worth living and dying and being resurrected for. Something more than success, smarts, pleasure, or power. Because the God of the cross is renewing and creating everything to flourish through the power of sacrificial love. And we get to be a part. So see, taking up your cross is part of your destiny, what you are made for. But there's a cost connected with it. Don't ask for comfort. Don't ask for ease. Don't ask for manageable. Ask to be given a burden for a challenge bigger than yourself. A burden that can make a difference in the world and that will require the best you have to give it, and then leave some space for God besides. Ask for a challenge that will keep you learning and growing and uncomfortable and hungry. Sometimes we kind of yearn for a problem-free life. But the truth is, a problem-free life would be death by boredom. It is precisely in working to solve problems and overcome challenges that we grow towards the person God wants us to become. Every problem you have, among other things, is kind of an invitation from the Spirit. And when we say yes, we're in the flow. The Spirit is in the adventure. The Spirit is in a dangerous world. To ask for the Spirit is to ask for risk. And the Spirit of God wants to make you a dangerous person. The Spirit wants to make you threatening to all injustice and apathy and complacency that keeps our world from flourishing. The Spirit wants to make you dangerously non-compliant in a broken world. Evelyn Brand. I love her story. When she was a young woman, she felt called by God to go to India. And as a single woman in 1909, a calling like that required a truckload of faith and determination. She met and married a young man named Jesse, and they began a ministry to people in rural India, bringing education and medical supplies, building roads to reduce the isolation of the poor. Early in their ministry, they went 7 years without a single convert. You think about 7 years of what feels like failure. And then a priest of a local tribal religion developed a fever, grew deathly ill. Nobody would go near him. But Evelyn and Jesse nursed him as he was dying. And he said, "This God, Jesus, must be the true God, because only Jesse and Evelyn will care for me in my dying." And he entrusted his children to them to care for after he died. And there was a kind of spiritual turning point in that part of the world. People began to examine the life and teachings of Jesus, and in increasing numbers to follow him. Evelyn and Jesse had 13 years of really fruitful service, and then Jesse died. By this time, Evelyn was 50 years old. Everybody expected her to go back home to England, but she would not do it. She was a feisty woman. She stayed another 20 years under the mission board that she had served so faithfully. She was known and loved for miles around as Granny Brand. Her son Paul, the doctor, came over when she was 70 years old. And this is what Paul Brand said about his mom. He said, "This is how to grow old. Allow everything else to fall away until those around you see only love." God has wired all of us up so that our bodies, our minds, our spirits require a challenge, a cause bigger than ourselves. And then the peak comes, not just when we're facing a challenge, but when we do it for a cause greater than ourselves. We experience the flow of the Spirit most deeply when we are focused on challenges that will enrich the world, and we cease to be preoccupied with just our own advancement. That's part of why life is not just about comfort. It's about saying, "God, give me another mountain." It might look like Granny Brand. It might be a story that never gets told. Nobody may know about it, but you or God. Doesn't matter. How do I recognize my challenge, my mountain? There's no formula. Just as in every other area of your growth, your mountain will not look exactly like anyone else's. But often you will know it because it lies at the intersection of the tasks that tap into your greatest strengths and the needs that tap into your deepest passions. This is for sure. God has a mountain with your name on it. She's an old lady. Everybody calls her Granny. She has spent her life in India, 20 years of widowhood over there. She is 70 years old. She gets word from the Home Mission Office in England. They're not going to give her another 5-year term. She's getting too old. But she is stubborn. She always wanted to go to the mountains, and they didn't have the resources for that in India. So the mission board said, "You're done now." She had a party to celebrate her time in India, and everybody there cheered her on. And then they all said, "Have a good trip back home." She said, "I'll tell you a little secret. I'm not going back home. I'm staying here." She had a little shack built with some resources that she had smuggled in. And then she got a pony. And she would ride from village to village on horseback. This ancient woman, to tell people about Jesus. She did that for 5 years on her own. One day she fell off and broke her hip. She's 75 years old. Her son, Paul Brand, eminent doctor, comes and says, "Mom, you had a great run. God's used you. It's time to turn it over now. You'll go back home." She said, "I'm not going back home." She said, "God, give me the mountain." She was 75 years old at that point. She spent another 18 years traveling from one village to another village on horseback to love people. Falls, concussions, sicknesses, aging. Nothing can stop her. She's 93 years old. She cannot ride horseback anymore. So the men in these villages, because they love Granny Brand so much, they put her on a stretcher and they carry her from one village to another. She lived 2 more years, and she gave those years as a gift, carried on a stretcher to help the poorest of the poor. She died, but she never retired. She just graduated. Your deepest longing is to be alive with God, to become the person God made you to be. This is the life available to you every moment. It is the life found in Jesus, the man on the cross, who mastered sin in his death and mastered death in his tomb, and dispenses life now with unparalleled authority. It is available to you in this moment, no matter what your situation. God is at work in this hour, and his purpose is to shape you to be not only his servant, but his friend. His purpose is that out of the core of your being, out of your belly, shall flow rivers of living water. Living the adventure God planned Becoming the person God created you to be is not one pursuit among many. It is why you were born. It is worth wanting more than everything else.